Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight. President Trump on the second leg of his Asia tour, sharing what he thinks he'll leave his meeting with Xi Jinping with. And a wild card, the president floating this about a meeting with the North Korean dictator, Mariotsu, on the ground in Tokyo, Japan. 2 U.S. Navy aircraft crash in the South China Sea. All crew members are rescued. Jack Bradley has what President Trump is saying about the cause and how this comes just days before high-stakes talks with China. Russia is continuing its offensive in eastern Ukraine, a day after announcing a nuclear test. Arian Pazdar has the latest on the battlefield situation and how President Trump is responding. Argentine President Javier Milei's party wins a decisive victory in the country's midterm elections. What this says about Milei's performance and how he reacts to the results. Hurricane Melissa has become a Category 5 storm, unleashing catastrophic winds and flooding in Jamaica. Officials have ordered evacuations as the storm barrels toward the island. Flights are delayed across the country as airports feel the effects of the government shutdown, and the Department of Agriculture says 41 million Americans could lose SNAP benefits. And President Trump says he would rule out running for the vice presidency in the 2028 election. That's as former VP Kamala Harris and California Governor Gavin Newsom both say they're considering a 2028 presidential bid.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Paul Graney, in for Tiffany Meyer. Ukraine has requested more air defense systems from the U.S. Russia is reportedly taking control of a key city in eastern Ukraine, and President Trump responds to a recent nuclear test by Moscow. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the Russia update.
They're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either.
President Trump responds to Russia taking a step towards deploying a nuclear-powered cruise missile. According to Moscow, the weapon can pierce any current or future anti-missile defense. Russia's military says a test shows the missile can travel over 8,000 miles, capable of reaching the U.S. Trump responded on Monday.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles.
Moscow defends its nuclear test. A spokesman says the action is needed to protect Russia's national interests.
To ensure security is crucial for Russia, especially in the context of the militaristic mood of the Europeans. The Europeans are gripped by hysteria that is Russophobic.
He added that the test is no reason to strain relations between Moscow and Washington. Meanwhile, the fighting in Ukraine continues. Ukraine is aiming to strengthen its positions in the strategic eastern transport hub of Pokrovsk. About 200 Russian troops have infiltrated the city in small groups.
Special attention is focused on Pokrovsk and the neighboring areas. That is where the occupier has concentrated its largest assault forces and where there is significant assault activity.
Ukraine reports armed firefights and the active deployment of drones. And Ukraine's foreign minister says Kiev is working closely with the US and European allies to accelerate the delivery of air defense systems.
We hope to purchase additional Patriot systems from the American side because it is one of the few systems that can effectively destroy ballistic missiles. Our request now is at least 10 systems that we need.
He added that the Patriot systems should be supplied by the end of the year. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
And the U.S. has amassed a significant military presence in the Caribbean Sea as part of the Trump administration's effort to combat narco-terrorist organizations operating in the region. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the latest developments and what we can expect in the days to come.
Thus far, the Trump administration has authorized 9 strikes against cartels, both in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. Some 43 designated narco-terrorists have been killed trying to smuggle over 100,000 lethal doses of illegal drugs.
Se están inventando.
The people of the United States know it. They are fabricating a new eternal war. They promised they would never again get involved in a war, and they are fabricating a war that we will avoid. How? By mobilizing the people of South America.
Nicolas Maduro, an indicted narco-terrorist, has a $50 million bounty on his head. He is accused of leading the cartel of the Suns and aiding and abetting other terrorist organizations infiltrate the United States, like Tren de Aragua and the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah.
If I was Maduro, I'd head to Russia or China right now.
Because?
His days are numbered. Something's going to happen. Whether it's internal or external, I think something's going to happen.
The U.S. has an amphibious readiness group with 4,000 Marines. The world's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier group and its entire air wing, a fast-attack nuclear submarine, 4 destroyers, a special forces ship, and a surveillance plane in the region.
President Trump told me yesterday that he plans to brief members of Congress when he gets back from Asia about future potential military operations against Venezuela and Colombia. So there will be a congressional briefing about a potential expanding from the sea to the land.
Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado has backed the U.S. strikes on foreign terrorist organizations and has thanked President Trump for his efforts in dismantling Maduro's narco-terrorist network that helped finance his regime.
The assets are there to do everything up to and including decapitation of government. Now, has a decision been made? That I don't know. But it looks increasingly like some action may take place.
Since Nicolas Maduro took power in Venezuela back in 2013, some 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country, causing the largest refugee crisis in the Americas in history. Close to 1 million Venezuelans have migrated to the United States. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And in Argentina, President Javier Milei's party winning a decisive victory in the midterm elections. In a victory speech, Milei hailed the win as a historic turning point for the nation.
Today has clearly been a historic day for Argentina. The Argentine people have decided to leave behind 100 years of decline and persevere on the path to freedom, progress, and growth. Today, we have passed a turning point. Today marks the beginning of building a great Argentina.
It's Milei's first major electoral test since taking office in 2023. Local media reported the party captured more than 40% of the national vote. Observers say the elections were a referendum on Milei's so-called shock therapy reforms aimed at slashing state spending and bureaucracy. Milei promised to put in place changes that would, quote, make Argentina great again. President Trump congratulated Milei on his victory, saying on Truth Social his administration's confidence in him was validated by the people of Argentina. Trump recently provided Argentina with a hefty financial rescue package, but had threatened to pull it away if Milei did not do well. And President Trump is in Tokyo, getting a royal welcome by Japan's Emperor Naruhito and saying he's hopeful about a trade deal with China, and what the president has to say about a possible meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong Un. We now go live to NTD Washington correspondent Mari Otsu, who's in Tokyo. Good evening, Mari. What can we expect ahead of the president's high-stakes meeting with CCP leader Xi Jinping?
Paul, good evening. Just a couple of weeks ago, President Trump said that the U.S. is in a trade war with China, and he threatened an additional 100% tariff on China as China curbed its rare earth exports. But now things seem to have cooled down on that front, as President Trump is projecting optimism about a potential trade deal with China as he arrives in Tokyo for the second stop on his Asia tour. This does come amid uncertainty, though, about how the president's talks with Xi Jinping on Thursday will go and whether China will actually keep its word. Take a look.
We have China coming, and it's going to be very interesting. I think we're going to come away with a deal.
This is coming as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he's reached a very substantial framework with his Chinese counterpart while in Kuala Lumpur.
The threat of the 100% has gone away, as has the threat of the immediate imposition of the Chinese initiating a worldwide export control regime. The soybean farmers are going to be extremely happy with this deal for this year and for the coming years.
Secretary Bessent says the framework also includes a final deal on the sale of TikTok in the U.S. President Trump on Sunday inked deals with Thailand and Malaysia to diversify the U.S.'s critical minerals supply chain as China, the world's top miner of rare earths, tightens its export controls. After signing those deals and brokering a peace declaration between Thailand and Cambodia, President Trump left Malaysia for Tokyo, where Emperor Naruhito gave him a royal welcome at the Imperial Palace. Their last meeting was 6 years ago during President Trump's first term. Meanwhile, President Trump says he's open to extending his trip to meet with North Korea's Kim Jong Un.
I'd love to meet with him if he'd like to meet. If he wants to meet, I'll be in South Korea.
It is worth noting that the administration has previously criticized the Chinese regime for violating prior trade deals. Even just last week, the U.S. opened an investigation into China's failure to comply with a trade agreement that President Trump had brokered during his first term. Now, looking ahead to President Trump's schedule today, the president is set to meet for the first time with Japan's new prime minister, Sanae Takaichi. This is someone that President Trump has spoken very favorably about, as she was close to President Trump's late friend and former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. President Trump will then visit the U.S. troops aboard the USS George Washington and return for a dinner with business leaders. Paul, back to you.
Mario Otsu in Tokyo, thank you. And 2 U.S. Navy aircraft going down within minutes of each other during routine operations in the South China Sea. It's just ahead of high-stakes talks between President Trump and CCP leader Xi Jinping. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
2 Navy aircraft went down in the South China Sea on Sunday. 1 Seahawk helicopter and a Super Hornet fighter jet were flying from a Navy carrier when they went down less than an hour apart. All 5 service members were safely recovered, and President Trump aboard Air Force One offering a possible explanation.
They're going to let me know pretty soon. I think they should be able to find out. It could be bad fuel. I mean, it's possible it's bad fuel. Very unusual that that would happen.
The Navy has not confirmed this theory, only saying that both crashes remain under investigation. Now, this is all happening as President Trump is meeting with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping later this week. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. and China have already agreed to a preliminary framework for negotiations when the 2 leaders meet in South Korea. Trump and Xi Jinping will not only be focusing on just trade, but also Chinese fentanyl and other security-related issues.
I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers.
The U.S. and China are amid a trade war, according to President Trump. And tensions are high as the U.S. and China earlier this year struck a trade deal to bring down triple-digit tariffs on each other. That agreement included China guaranteeing rare earth mineral exports to the U.S. But over the past few weeks, the CCP has gone back on their word and restricted those exports to the U.S. and other countries around the world. Analysts tell NTD that even if the CCP strikes a trade deal with the U.S., they'll likely undermine it soon after benefiting from it.
You really can't trust anything that Xi signs or that the CCP signs. The key thing is to have leverage over them. If you don't have leverage, they'll break any deal to further their own interests.
Chinese behavior over the last few months is something we've not seen before. There's a Chinese expression, you die, I live. And that does not mean much if you're hoping for concessions from the Chinese.
The long game for the CCP is the death of what America represents for the world. They say this openly, they write it about in their documents, they call us their #1 enemy in everything they write.
And at the same time, China's state media is reporting that it sent military fighter jets and nuclear-capable bombers to conduct military drills near Taiwan, calling them confrontation drills, possibly looking to use this threat of invading Taiwan as leverage to pressure Trump to sign a deal. Now, Taiwan's defense ministry says that these reports are just not true. They're propaganda as a means to intimidate the self-governing democratic island. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And a team from Egypt is now assisting the Red Cross to help search for the remaining bodies of hostages in the Gaza Strip. It comes as the terrorist group Hamas hands over one more body, which they say is that of a deceased hostage. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
The Hamas terrorist group continued searching on Monday for the bodies of deceased hostages that remain in the Gaza Strip. And Israel has now authorized an Egyptian team to work with the Red Cross to help search for the bodies in the territory. Israel's government spokesperson explained.
Now, this is a technical team only, and none of these personnel are in the military. Now, the Red Cross and the Egyptian team are allowed entry beyond the IDF's yellow line position into Gaza territory to conduct the search for our hostages.
And on the same day, the Hamas terrorist group handed over one more body of a deceased hostage. And if the identity of a deceased hostage is confirmed, that will leave the bodies of 12 hostages in the territory. Israel has vowed to return the bodies of all remaining hostages and said they, together with Egypt, will ensure that Hamas upholds their side of the agreement in returning the bodies. This comes as the Israel Defense Forces deployed a new division to the northern Gaza Strip, and Israel says that new division is taking over operational responsibility for that area. While speaking at an award ceremony for the Israel Security Agency, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu compared Israel's power to others in the Middle East.
Today, Israel is considered, and not exaggeratedly, the strongest power in the Middle East. We have changed the entire balance of deterrence and the balance of power.
Israel has also decided that they will choose which foreign countries will be allowed to provide security in the Gaza Strip, and that Turkey won't be one of them. Israel's foreign minister explained.
Turkey, led by Erdogan, not only hostile statements, but also diplomatic and economic measures against Israel. So it is not reasonable for us to let their armed forces enter to Gaza Strip.
Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, some residents continue to hold on to their keys after they evacuated from their homes during the war. A local resident explained.
We took the house keys. Here they are, the house keys. We took them so we would come back and find the house. But when the truce happened, we returned, and we didn't find the house. We didn't even find the door.
On the same day, trucks carrying fuel and humanitarian aid were seen entering the Gaza Strip from the Egyptian border. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And Hurricane Melissa is battering Jamaica with life-threatening winds and flooding, claiming several lives already. Officials now urging residents to take shelter as the strongest hurricane of the year lashes the island. Christina Corona has the latest.
Hurricane Melissa has intensified into a powerful Category 5 storm as it bears down on Jamaica, making it the strongest storm on Earth to hit this year. The storm is bringing catastrophic flooding, destructive winds, and life-threatening storm surges to the island. At least 6 people have been killed. As of 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Melissa was about 145 miles southwest of Kingston, packing sustained winds of 175 miles per hour. Jamaica's Prime Minister has issued a mandatory evacuation order for all residents in threatened areas, including the parishes of Clarendon, St. Catherine, Kingston, and St. Andrew.
We urge persons to stay inside, stay within the precincts of your home, the curtilage of your property. Don't venture outside unnecessarily because the winds, as you can see, can pick up at any time. The rains can come at any time. You can be caught in a flash flood. So we urge you to, at this time, stay inside.
The National Hurricane Center warns that Hurricane Melissa could bring up to 40 inches of rain and storm surges reaching 13 feet, causing extensive damage to infrastructure and potentially isolating entire communities. Hundreds of shelters have been opened as officials urge people to seek higher ground.
Remember, you need to pack your medication. Remember, you need to take a little food items with you because we don't have that at the shelter just now. And if you have small children, then you know that you'll have to take feeding and you'll have to take Pampers because at the shelter we don't have that.
Winds of 74 miles per hour or higher could hit land after midnight, striking Jamaica's southern coast first before spreading across the island. Hurricane Melissa's outer bands are already hitting the island with torrential rain and hurricane-forced winds. Meteorologists say warmer ocean waters are fueling Melissa, helping it intensify rapidly.
So over 90% of the extra heat that we trap in our Earth system goes into the oceans. And what that means is that our oceans are warming up. It plays out in many different ways, one of them being more fuel for these storms to intensify more rapidly.
By Monday afternoon, the hurricane was slowly moving west-northwest at 3 miles per hour and is forecast to cross southeastern Cuba Tuesday and the southeastern Bahamas Wednesday. The storm is not expected to hit the U.S. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Stay safe, Jamaica. We turn now to Capitol Hill, where the government shutdown is now in its 27th day. Pressure now growing on Congress to reach a deal as the deadlock disrupts air travel and threatens food assistance. Here are the details.
Answer any questions that you might have.
Airports from Los Angeles to Newark were hit with long delays yesterday as a shortage of air traffic controllers slowed flights nationwide. At Los Angeles International Airport, a 2-hour ground stop was issued because of staffing problems in Oakland. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says he expects more disruptions as the shutdown forces controllers to work without pay. Duffy told Fox News the pressure is mounting as more controllers call in sick amid growing financial strain. Trump administration officials say Democrats in the Senate are to blame for the shutdown and its economic fallout. A Republican-backed stopgap failed to make it out of the Senate last week, with the majority of Democrats voting against the bill. It was the 12th time a Senate vote on the plan failed. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told ABC News it's causing embarrassment on the world stage.
It's a global embarrassment what these Democratic senators are doing, keeping the government shut down.
Democrats are pushing back. They say Republicans need to consider their health care proposals, including addressing Affordable Care Act tax subsidies set to expire at the end of the year. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called on House Speaker Mike Johnson to get Republicans back to Congress.
Our view as Democrats is that we want to sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, either at the Capitol or back at the White House, to reopen the government, to enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, while at the same time decisively addressing the Republican health care crisis that is crushing the American people.
The shutdown is now the second longest in U.S. history, and its effects are spreading far beyond the airports. The Department of Agriculture says 41 million Americans could lose their food stamps next month if Congress doesn't act to reopen the government. The agency says emergency funds can't be used for regular SNAP benefits once federal money runs out. Democrats have criticized the administration's handling of food assistance funding. They say officials should release contingency funds that were previously allocated to support low-income families. With flights grounded and families bracing for lost benefits, lawmakers remain deadlocked, with no clear path to end the shutdown or its growing fallout.
And President Trump said today he would rule out running for the vice presidency in the 2028 federal election. Trump said he would be allowed to do it, but he didn't think the people would like it. He called it too cute. The president praised Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance as potential future Republican candidates. And according to the 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, no one may be elected to the U.S. presidency a third time. Some have suggested that one way around this prohibition would be for Trump to stand as vice president, while another candidate stood for president and resigned, letting Trump again assume the presidency. Opponents, though, have disputed whether this would be legal. We'll keep you updated. Meanwhile, former Vice President Kamala Harris is hinting she may run for president again. Her comments aired in an interview just yesterday. In an interview with the BBC, Harris said, quote, "I'm not done." It marked her clearest indication yet that she might still launch another presidential campaign in 2028, following her defeat to Trump in 2024. While Harris said she has not made a final decision, she still views herself as an active player in politics. And in a CBS News Sunday morning interview that aired yesterday, California Governor Gavin Newsom confirmed he's considering a 2028 presidential run. Newsom said he currently has no idea if he will enter the race and will make a decision after the 2026 midterm elections. Newsom's term as governor ends in January 2027, and he's unable to seek re-election due to term limits. He's already visited several early primary states, including South Carolina, in an early sign he may be testing the interest of voters. And still to come this evening, Zohran Mamdani leads a three-man race in the polls to be the New York City's next mayor. But what if one of the other two drops out? Dave Martin joins us at the Data Hub when we return. Welcome back. I'm Paul Graney. We're joined at the Data Hub by election data analyst Dave Martin. Dave, great to see you.
And great to see you, Paul.
Dave, the banner race this year is the New York City mayoral race. A crowded field even after Adams dropped out. What are polls telling us right now?
Let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at a recent one just from earlier this month. This is a Gotham AAR people of likely voters earlier this month. Here we go. Choice for mayor of New York City, number one in the lead. Zohran Mamdani at 43%. Now, right behind him, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo coming in at 29%. Now, Cuomo was a Democrat running as an independent after Mamdani beat him in the June Democrat primary. In third place, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate, at 19.5%. And then we've got 8.5% undecided or other voters. Now, if we rewind 4 years to the 2021 race for mayor, here we go.
Wow.
Current mayor Eric Adams won this, getting 67.5%, 2/3 of the vote here. Curtis Sliwa came in at second at 28%. Now, Adams, though, he was running as a re-election. He was independent, but he dropped out about a month ago. He was actually polling behind Curtis Sliwa in fourth place. So he dropped out. So now we just have a three-man race here.
But Dave, this is significant. 68, give or take, to 27. But Eric Adams is a much different candidate than the frontrunner Zohran Mamdani. There are many people, he's a Democratic Socialist. There are many people calling for either Sliwa or Cuomo to drop out of the race in order to prevent Mamdani from winning. What would happen if either Sliwa or Cuomo dropped out?
Well, that's a very good question, Paul. Let's actually take a look, because clearly they are taking votes from each other in this poll. This is the same poll here. This is the Gotham poll, Gotham AAR people of likely voters. If Andrew Cuomo dropped out, all of a sudden you'd see a Zohran Mamdani. He gets about a 3-point bump here, up to about 47% if Cuomo drops out. But the real winner here is going to be Curtis Sliwa. He gets up to 32%. That's a 12-point bump if Cuomo drops out. And actually, the undecided actually gets the biggest jump here, up to 22%. There's a 14-point bump right here. Now, if you look at these numbers, you say, all right, well, it is mathematically possible then for Sliwa, if he gets a majority of these undecideds, that he can possibly overtake Mamdani. But a closer look at this 22% shows that about 74%, about 3/4 of them are actually Democrats. So it seems highly unlikely that they would actually vote for a Republican. Now, if we look at the inverse, what if Sliwa dropped out here? You say choice for mayor. Zohran Mamdani will give...
Much closer.
Yeah, much closer. Mamdani only goes up 1 point if Sliwa comes out. Now, Cuomo, though, is the big winner in this case.
And I'm going to point out, that's within the margin of error, Dave. That's within the margin of error.
You got it exactly right, just within. He goes up, what, 14 points here? I'm sorry, 12 points. Just to 3.9% behind here. There. Undecideds is about a 6-point jump. And yes, as you pointed out, he is just within the margin of error right here. So it's very clear Cuomo and Sliwa are definitely taking votes from each other.
Well, there are calls for this to be the final race. Calls. Sliwa says he's not going to do it. Looking at him, he's probably not going to do it, but this is interesting. Now, does anything from the presidential race last year, any indication on how Trump performed and how the sentiment towards Republicans or more towards conservative values may affect this race coming up next week?
Yeah, I mean, that generally is a good indicator. If you look last year, Kamala Harris took 55, she took New York State winning 55%, but specifically in New York City, if you look here, these are the 5 boroughs of New York City added up. She took 69% of the vote, while Trump took 30%. Harris took 4 of the 5 boroughs there, with Staten Island the only one voting for Trump. No surprise, though, in largely Democratic city would vote for Kamala Harris there. So that's one indicator anyway from the last year, the presidential results.
It's a blue city, Dave.
It's a blue city.
There's no way around it. You're going to be here all week, right?
I'm going to be here all week, Paul.
That's great. And now we're also, stay with us all of this week as we cover the election. Plus, next week, we will have full election results as they come in from 7 p.m. Eastern until 12 p.m. that night. That is November 4th, next Tuesday. You can stay with us to get the latest election results with live analysis from our data reporters and on-the-ground teams. NTD Steve Lance, Tiffany Meyer, you see them on the screen. They'll bring you the live coverage with the biggest races, not just New York, but from across New Jersey and Virginia. That's Tuesday, November 4th, 7 p.m. Eastern, only here on NTD. Don't miss it. Welcome back. I'm Paul Graney. President Trump is in Japan as part of his Asia tour. He's already met with the Japanese emperor and will meet with the new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. Takaichi is known as a China hawk and has consistently criticized the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, Chinese leader Xi Jinping did not send her congratulatory note when she won. He usually does. And joining us now to discuss why Trump is focused on Asia right now and how what's happening there could impact us here is Andrew Harding, Senior Associate for National Security Coalitions at the Heritage Foundation. Andrew, good evening.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Andrew, Japan's new Prime Minister has been labeled as Japan First. What do you put her success down to?
Well, I think the new Prime Minister's success comes down to really prioritizing the national interest of Japan. That's exactly what you'll be looking for in a Prime Minister and a leader of your country. And I think that type of foundation is going to resonate very well with President Trump. We know that the new Prime Minister Takaichi, is very much focused on putting Japanese interests first. She's very interested in providing economic security for the Japanese people. She's very focused on having an anti-China perspective when it comes to national security. And that's the right type of position the Japanese Prime Minister ought to have in today's current security dynamics in the Indo-Pacific. As you may note and others may know, the new Prime Minister worked very closely and as an aide and a prior minister under Shinzo Abe, the former Japanese Prime Minister, for multiple years. And this is the type of legacy that she hopes to continue. She's also made very clear that she is a supporter of the late former British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. So combining this all together, this type of foundation of wanting to advance Japanese national interest and work with leaders such as President Trump that has a sane perspective for their own countries, that to me is a recipe for success and something that I'm looking forward to in seeing the upcoming meeting between the two leaders.
Why do you think Japan was ready to elect Takaichi now?
Well, I think in Japan, they're very much looking at, like with any country, how do you resolve any domestic problems that you need a strong new leader in position that can address the concerns that the people have. So, of course, in Japanese domestic politics and the current ruling party, LDP, is having to work through who that next leader may be. We know, however, that the people are very pleased with these recent leadership decisions. Specifically, we know that the new Prime Minister has an approval rating right now of just about 70%. That is a very high number, especially if you're looking at U.S. presidential numbers, you're commonly seeing a presidential approval rating hovering around 50 or so percent, depending on the poll you look at. So for the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister of Japan, to come in at an approval rating of around 70% tells me that the Japanese people have faith in her to address inflationary pressures, that are looking at how to reduce the cost of living in Japan. These problems are very much action items that the Prime Minister wants to get moving on immediately. And I'm sure that President Trump, as he's visiting Asia, will be able to resonate with different similar policy ideas of looking to reduce the cost of living, certainly in the United States, and looking at what types of relationships can the U.S. and Japan improve upon to help make those realities possible for both countries.
It seems people are facing the same issues worldwide, Andrew. And I believe her approval ratings are historically high, which, as you mentioned, is quite incredible to see somebody with that level of support. Now, Takaichi, she calls Communist China a major threat in the region. How might the United States and Japan work together to counter China?
Well, Paul, this is one of the most critical questions that I really think this meeting with President Trump and the new Prime Minister Takaichi will really lead to some progress there. First and foremost, I'm looking at defense. The new Prime Minister in Japan are very clear-eyed about the threat that China poses to not only to Japan, but to the entire Indo-Pacific region. Prime Minister Takaichi has made very clear that she views Taiwan as a partner, has openly looked at ways to work more closely with Taiwan, having previously met with the president of Taiwan herself in a previous role. What that tells me is that the prime minister is going to look at a defense question, look at the region and the China relationship in a national security angle, looking to safeguard Japan from China's economic tools that China has shown it's willing to weaponize, not only against Japan, but the United States and the entire world, specifically with recent export controls that has certainly really caused a lot of concern around the world. So what that tells me is this relationship will be defense-centric, look at economic security, and as a result, allow the U.S. and Japan to grow more closely. This is a shared threat backed by shared values with shared interests. And that tells me that we can have a good relationship moving forward with the prime minister and president aligned on these issues that I'm really optimistic about.
President Trump said he will also bring up the Taiwan issue with Chinese leader Xi Jinping when he meets him later this week or early next week. What are you expecting to come out of that meeting between Trump and Xi?
Well, what I'm really looking for is following the meeting with President Trump and General Secretary Xi Jinping, I want to see if there's going to be agreements made, and there may not be. President Trump has made very clear that he will only agree to things that are in America's interest, that it makes sense to do on behalf of the American people. It's the type of leadership that the American people ought to support and welcome when it comes to advocating for America on the world stage and interacting in one of the most important, if not the most important bilateral relationships that the U.S. has with the People's Republic of China. So with this in mind, I think the president should really keep pushing for an agreement or any types of deals or whatnot that may come from these meetings that makes Americans safer, that makes America stronger, more secure, and makes America more prosperous. Whether that comes to ensuring that export controls cannot be weaponized against the United States, ensuring that rare earth minerals can continue to get into the United States, to ensure our military has the resources it needs, but also American consumers have the products they need. This also looks like pushing back on fentanyl, ensuring that fentanyl precursors from China stop making their way into the United States and killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. It also looks at agricultural access, ensuring that American farmers are able to have fair, competitive access to selling soybeans is one particular example. So as the president works on this with General Secretary Xi, those are the types of things that I think we should be looking for.
Well, Andrew, let's hope the CCP make good on those promises this time. Andrew Harding at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
And what does the Trump administration's framework for a trade deal with China mean for the United States? And has China's recent actions strengthened Trump's position in the negotiations? For more analysis on this topic, we hear from Dennis Wilder, Senior Fellow at Georgetown University, tonight on Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern. Tune in. And still to come, a Utah judge today granted Tyler Robinson's request to not wear a prison uniform at his pre-trial hearings. The judge then placed restrictions on media coverage, and Arlene Richards has the latest. Police increased their presence outside the ICE facility in Portland while the city awaits a judge's decision on whether to allow deployment of the National Guard. Jason Blair on the scene with the details after the break. And a breakthrough in the Louvre Museum jewel heist. French police have arrested 2 suspects linked to the crime. David Vivez has more from Paris when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Paul Graney. A Utah judge today ruled that Tyler Robinson, the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk, can wear civilian clothes at all his court appearances. NTD's Arlene Richards has more from the hearing.
A Utah judge on Monday granted Tyler Robinson's request to wear street clothes at pretrial hearings.
The case has attracted extraordinary public and media attention. Images of Mr. Robinson in jail clothing are likely to circulate widely and influence prospective jurors. Given the scale of that publicity, the risk of prejudice is significant.
Robinson is charged with aggravated murder and other felonies in the shooting death of Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk. Robinson, 22, turned himself into authorities in September. The prosecutor and sheriff's office opposed the civilian attire, arguing that publicity has already exceeded their concerns. In granting Robinson's request, Judge Tony Graff said all defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Therefore, Robinson should dress as an innocent man. But he denied Robinson's request to appear without physical restraints.
The charges he faces are extraordinarily serious, carrying potential penalties of life imprisonment or death. The safety of Mr. Robinson, the attorneys, court staff, and the public must remain the court's highest priority.
Graff said he would now prohibit the media from photographing or recording Robinson's physical restraints or show him entering and exiting the courtroom. An October 30th hearing was canceled. The next hearing is scheduled for January 16th. Robinson is expected to be present and wearing civilian clothing. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And Portland is awaiting a judge's decision on whether to allow the Trump administration to deploy National Guard troops to the city. Meanwhile, local and state police significantly increased their presence outside of the Portland ICE facility, which is at the center of why the White House wants to mobilize the Guard. NTD correspondent Jason Blair is in Portland now. Good evening, Jason. Can you give us the latest on the National Guard situation there?
Yeah, hey, Paul. So the judge for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals originally said she's going to make her decision today. However, we still have not seen anything from her yet. The court does technically have until Tuesday evening to make the decision. So this decision could allow the National Guard to be deployed while a court case plays out. And it is still only about 3:45 p.m. local time here, so it's very possible we'll hear something maybe by the end of the day about that decision.
Jason, you've been in the midst of it there. How have things been on the ground near the ICE facility?
Yeah, so as you said, there has definitely been more police presence. On Sunday evening, there was a pretty steady stream of police coming in and out of the area, staying in the area, something that I have not seen before. And it looks like they are following through on what they said on Saturday when they came into the area to make protesters take down a long time encampment that's been up on the sidewalk there. They did say that they will be coming by more in the days to come. But as I pointed out in previous reports, having a steady police presence would actually be normal protocol for the vast majority of cities when these type of protests are going on. But this is the first time I've seen it happen here in Portland. However, despite the police presence, there was still some physical altercations between protesters and counter-protesters. There were 2 confirmed arrests. One was made after an altercation took place, and another was made after police reviewed a video of the altercation and then came back to arrest another person. Both were charged with harassment. And then another interesting thing that I've noticed the past few days is the number of ICE supporters or counter-protesters that have been on site outside of the facility has grown quite a bit. And sometimes they even almost match the number of protesters there outside of the ICE facility. Back to you.
That's an incredible piece of nugget of information about the counter-protesters. That's Jason, thank you so much. And a breakthrough in the Louvre Museum jewel heist. French police have arrested 2 suspects linked to the theft of royal jewels. Police say they caught them as they were preparing to flee the country. NTD international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
French police have arrested 2 suspects who allegedly took part in the theft of the royal jewels from the Louvre Museum. Paris prosecutor's office says one was caught at Paris Charles de Gaulle airport as he tried to board a flight to Algeria. The other was reportedly preparing to travel to Mali. Both men were located in the northeastern suburbs of Paris and were already known to authorities for jewelry store robberies. Police had identified the 2 suspects last week and followed them in the hope of finding the stolen jewels. When officers realized they were about to flee France, they proceeded with the arrests. Police are also investigating a possible inside job, as one Louvre employee may have been an accomplice in the theft. Officers are now searching for 2 remaining suspects. The 4 thieves used a mechanical lift to reach a first-floor balcony of the Louvre's Gallery of Apollo, where they cut through a window using power tools. Investigators said they found about 150 DNA samples, including on a helmet and a glove, which led to the arrests. The stolen collection, worth over $100 million, includes a diamond tiara and a necklace once worn by Empress Eugénie, the wife of Napoleon III. The arrests mark an important first step toward recovering the jewels.
Yes, it's important for our heritage. A week later, it does feel a bit late. We wonder how this could even happen, but it was important that the guys were caught.
I think the main thing now is whether they can recover the jewels. That's what really matters.
A Senate hearing with the Louvre's president last week highlighted major flaws in the museum's security, including cameras pointed away from the area during the robbery and thin glass on the windows. The Louvre has since transferred its remaining jewels to the Bank of France for safekeeping. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney. Good night.